Good morning. This is Marcy Hronik from Canadian Equality Consulting, and I'm jumping on here quickly for our 10-minute coffee chat to discuss ways that you can make remote working and virtual working more inclusive and equitable. So thank you for joining me again for our second coffee chat. And we know that there are many different kind of inequities or inequalities that people experience in the workplace, and often those can be exacerbated in virtual environments. And they can be just as present or worsen, and they show up differently. So I want to share with you today kind of how you can detect those and what you can do about them. Because we know it's so important to consider the unique needs of our employees. And we know that by making intentional choices, we can then ensure that no one is excluded and that we can mitigate these inequalities before they even start. So beyond the traditional advice that you're probably receiving or that you could find with a Google search about remote working and virtual environments, the general advice of make sure your microphone's muted when you're not talking, put your video on, position it to eye level, avoid distractions, that typical advice. I want to take this opportunity to move beyond that to talk specifically about equity and kind of inclusion advice and practices that you can adopt right away. So there's kind of three themes that I'll be talking about today. One is around expectations in virtual working environments. And the second is about how you can create an inclusive virtual culture. And the third is specific to how you can hold inclusive virtual meetings. So let's jump right into the first one around setting expectations. So this includes setting expectations around how often will you communicate with your team or with your colleagues? Do you aim to send kind of multiple emails throughout the day, constant steady communication? Are impromptu phone calls okay? Or are you going to be compiling a list of their questions and responding once a day? So making sure that that's really clear to everyone. A way you can do that as well is to create a team schedule. And that the team schedule can track everyone's office hours, that they can set themselves to be really flexible. But also it can track work projects, and that can be really useful. So you could use tools like Monday.com, Trello, Slack, even Google Drive has that ability. And make sure that you're clear on your estimated response times. So you can put that in an out of office notification right off the hop and say kind of what your office hours that you're setting for yourself are, and or kind of ballpark ones, because it's hard to commit to those during this environment, and then also estimated response times. It's also really important to set boundaries for yourself and for your teams. So because it can be so hard to unplug in a virtual environment. And if you're less productive during the day because of like children or other reasons, and then you may be more productive in the evening, but that can be harmful to your mental health if you're not taking adequate breaks. So it's important to stick to those office hours as much as you possibly can, but also more importantly, ensure that you are able to take breaks. During this time, mental health is critically important. So ensuring that you are still contributing to employee assistance programs as an employer, or if you don't, please look into that. It's where you can offer virtual and complimentary mental health coaching and counseling services for your employees, which can be really important and really critical during this time. It's also, as an employer or a manager, it's important to make sure you're aware of the domestic violence cues. So there's a lot of great resources out there right now, and I'll put some in the notes of this episode, but domestic violence and intimate partner violence is skyrocketing right now, and people are being self-isolated and trapped at home. So making sure that you can pick up on those cues to help people is really important. It's also important to ensure that everyone has the tools they need to work from home. That may seem like an obvious one, but making sure everyone has access to reliable internet, laptops, computers, phone, things like that. So you may need to be creative with your budget currently, and your IT team, make sure they're kind of on standby or able to connect with different people to help them troubleshoot issues. You can also look into there may be some tax write-offs that could benefit your company or your business right now. So by using your home internet or your phone lines, you may be able to write off a portion of that at tax time. So, and it's also important to ensure that people with varying abilities have the support that they need during this time. So if you have an ability or an accommodations expert, make sure that they're available and that people are able to check in with them to have assessments done to make sure that they have everything they need to thrive in this new environment. It's also incredibly important to normalize disruptions. So schools, daycares are closed. Children are coming in and out of meetings with you, probably. Pets may be barking in the background. So it's important to normalize this, not just for your female employees, but for all genders, because we want to normalize this increased responsibilities in caregiving for everyone. So ensure your staff know that this is okay, and even dedicate time in your meetings for the kids to pop on, or a pet to pop on, and you can introduce them. Okay, the second topic today is about how to foster an inclusive culture in this virtual environment. So this is a great opportunity for you to reflect and think about what contributed to your positive culture before this happened that is worth maintaining, or kind of pivoting or adapting slightly to this new environment that you'd like to continue. It's also important to note and think about what is not worth continuing. So what can you change or what can you add? And when you're doing that, flexibility is incredibly important. It's also very important to ensure that decisions that you're making during this time are inclusive. So if you need to, delay decisions until you receive feedback from all of the relevant people. There's nothing worse than feeling already isolated and out of the loop with poor communication from your team, and then them making decisions without you on a project that you're working on, or a project that would dramatically affect your work. So it's incredibly important to slow down if you need to make sure that everyone is considered and consulted. Loneliness and isolation is another huge factor that people are battling right now. So ways that you can promote an inclusive culture and mitigate these feelings is through virtual happy hours, or morning coffee chats, being mindful of time zones, and also, or even water cooler chats. So where there's no agenda, it's free-flowing conversation. People can chat informally and kind of check in with each other, show each other's children as well, or pets, things like that. But that's a nice way to kind of create and foster some community. And there's some nice inclusive icebreakers and games that if you reach out to me, I can send to you, that you can use if you're nervous about having it free flowing and no format. I can give you an activity that you could do. It's also so important to celebrate wins during this time. So recognition is still important. So make sure you recognize hardworking people, people that have just taken on another project, people that have just finished a project. Give shout outs and appreciation as much as you can right now, and continue to celebrate birthdays and holidays. So the third topic is specific to virtual meetings. So we know it's important to keep your video on so people can see you, and even read your mouth. It's also important to make sure that you have agendas set, and that those agendas are sent in advance to give people more time to prepare. Note-taking is important, because if you are distracted or there's other things going on in your environment, you may not always be, fully on track, or keeping track of all of your takeaways or things that you need to do after the meeting. So making sure that either there's virtual tools that will note take for you in a meeting, or there's a dedicated person on your team that will do that. And make sure that you rotate those responsibilities, because those type of office housework type of work are more often unfortunately delegated to women or racialized individuals on your team. So try to make it equitable by rotating. There are also different pieces of technology that allow you to do live captioning. So, and not just for people with varying abilities or varying abilities with hearing, but also those that may have a child napping or anything where they need to keep the volume down low. They can still follow the conversation through this live captioning. And there's some tools like 3Play Media or HearView that'll do that for you. Make sure that you also leave space to do a check-in at the start of your meeting. So to see how everyone's doing, whether they're stressed, whether they're distracted, or whether they're, ready to go. That's important to kind of set the stage and the tone for the meeting, and to keep tabs on the mental health and how your team is doing and if they're supported. Also, it's important to also think about, and an easy way to remember this is the acronym POAG. So purpose, outcome, agenda, and ground rules. So those are 4 things that are incredibly important for you to remember for every meeting. So make sure that the purpose and the outcome are clear at the start. Make sure the agenda is circulated in advance and reviewed at the start of the meeting. And then ground rules or expectations. And that's by saying at the start of the meeting, I know we're all kind of distracted. We're being pulled in so many different directions right now. We fully expect to be disrupted a couple times during this meeting. And that's okay. I understand. And it's really hard. And, let's check in. How's everyone doing? Or then, okay, let's set some time aside to meet family members right off the bat, or chat about a story that you experienced recently, anything like that. And it's also important to try to keep things fun during this time. So a lot of these tools where you're using virtual meetings, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Hangouts, all allow you to change your background, to do different virtual backgrounds. So play with that and have themed meetings. So a themed meeting could be where you encourage everyone to dress up a certain way, be really funny, dress up as someone that inspires them, and then they can talk a little bit about that at the start of the meeting. Or choose a virtual background and tell us why you chose it. Or you could upload a photo and put it as your virtual background, and make it as, you could ask people to choose a place that they love, and they can upload that in the background, and it's like they're actually there, and they can talk about it a little bit. And all of these are fantastic strategies to foster community, check in with each other, and heighten empathy during this really difficult time. It's also important to continue your EDI learning, so your equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and your equity, diversity, and inclusion learning. So ensure that you're still maintaining and using people's chosen pronouns. If you're unaware of that, make sure you ask. And that's a good thing to do at the start of a meeting as well, is to everyone when they go around, also state their chosen pronoun. It's also a change of pace that we're all in right now, where flexibility is really important, and learning and continuing ed and continuing learning may be a good time for people right now to do kind of progress through on their own schedule, and make it flexible. So Canadian Equality Consulting is about to launch a variety of different webinars and e-courses that you and your teams can do together, or separately, kind of at your own pace on your own time, in order to continue that. So overall, it's a key takeaway from this coffee chat is to make sure that you're aware of, how your team's doing and the unique needs they may have. And the best way to do that is to not just adopt these different strategies or think about these different ideas that I shared with you this morning to see if you could implement them, but also to survey your employees. So it's a fantastic time to send out a really short online survey. Contact me after this video or directly at Canadian Equality Consulting. I'm happy to send one to you for free. I made one specific for this environment. There's a long version one and a shorter version one. The longer version one would take probably about a full 5 minutes to complete. The shorter version one, a couple minutes at most. And the longer version one is for a company with a lot of employees, where you can ask different diversity demographic questions as well, where people wouldn't be identifiable. But the shorter survey is removes those diversity demographic questions because you don't want people to be readily identifiable either. And it is a great check-in tool to see, how's it going? Are your needs being met? What are the challenges you're experiencing? And how can I help you? How can I help you navigate through this and to help you be successful? So the result of this will be, of this time, can be really positive. It can result in a better culture. It can result in a more outcomes focused workplace, more flexible schedules for employees, which really helps. It can lead to more inclusion and diversity overall. So thank you so much for joining me this morning, and check out Canadian Equality Consulting.ca. It's CanadianEquality.ca for more info. We have a number of different services that we could support you during this difficult time. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day.